A folded paper napkin with a child's messy handwriting. That's all she left behind. Jennifer Coolidge didn't mean to stay long. She thought it was just a free food event. A chance to eat something warm, maybe grab a roll for her grandmother back home. But when she sat beside a quiet boy in a hoodie, something shifted. He wasn't like the others. He didn't boast or brag. He just listened and asked her to tell him a story. She didn't know he was the son of James Remar, a powerful CEO whose company once erased the only home she'd ever known. She didn't plan to connect with his child, and she certainly didn't expect to be remembered. But the boy did, and the father watched. What followed wasn't a fairy tale. It was a slow, tender unfolding of trust, truth, and a past that refused to stay buried. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Jennifer didn't even like these kinds of events. Too many signs, too many smiling people, too much pretending. She wasn't dressed for a gala, anyway. Just an old denim jacket with frayed cuffs, a sun-bleached t-shirt with a tiny ketchup stain near the hem, and her boots, the only pair without holes in the soles. She walked slowly past the glittering sign outside the city plaza. Community tasting. Invite only. Sponsored by Remar Foods. The invite-only part had been scribbled over with a marker. Poorly. That's what fooled her. She didn't know it was a private corporate dinner disguised as a tasting. Didn't know that most of the people inside had name tags and stock portfolios. She just knew that someone in line told her, "It's free, honey. Just walk in and smile like you belong." So she did. For her grandmother. For herself. For the aching in her stomach that had started the night before and hadn't gone away since. Inside, the smell nearly made her knees buckle. Roasted garlic. Fresh bread. Melted butter on grilled fish. She tried to act casual. Pretend she was one of the waitstaff on a break. And then she saw him. A small boy, maybe 9, sitting alone at one of the side tables with a plate of food untouched in front of him. His hoodie was too big for his frame. His hair was a mess, not from neglect, but from disinterest. He didn't look around like the other children. Didn't pull at a phone or search for company. He just sat, watching people like they were parts of a play he didn't audition for. Jennifer's instinct kicked in. She scanned for name tags, uniforms, reserved signs. None. Just that quiet kid with a pair of oversized headphones hanging around his neck like a necklace. She walked over slowly. The seat next to him was open. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes the color of a storm rolling in. Then a shrug. "Sure." She sat. No one stopped her. No one noticed. "You not eating that?" she asked, motioning to his plate. He shook his head. "Don't like salmon." "Me neither. Tastes like regret and lemon." That got a twitch, almost a smile. "I'm Jennifer." He hesitated. "Ron. Cool name. Sounds like someone who could lift a bus in a comic book." Now it was definitely a smile. They didn't talk much at first. But they didn't need to. She told a silly story about a pigeon who stole someone's bagel and became mayor of the city. Ron listened, eyes locked on her face, not blinking. When she paused, he asked the kind of question only a kid would. "Do pigeons pay taxes if they're mayors?" She snorted. "Only in crumbs." Time passed like it had been suspended. The loud clatter of the event faded into background hum. And for the first time in what felt like weeks, Jennifer forgot to feel small. She wasn't the girl with nothing. She was just someone telling a story to a boy who wanted to hear one. Then came the voice. Ron. Deep, controlled. familiar to anyone who had ever turned on a news channel or read the cover of Forbes. Jennifer turned and saw him. James Remar, the Remar, CEO, billionaire, host of the event, towering in a charcoal gray suit, sharp as a blade. He looked at Jennifer. She looked at him. And for a moment, everything stopped. Ron turned too. "She's okay, Dad. She was just keeping me company." Jennifer stood up immediately, flustered. I didn't know this was a private thing. I thought it was public." "I'm sorry." But James didn't interrupt, didn't scold, just nodded once. "You're not on the list," he said calmly. "No, sir. You ate the bread." She flushed. "I'll leave. I didn't mean to." Then came the quiet voice beside her. "Can I have her number?" Both adults turned. Ron was still seated, now looking up at his father. "I want to ask her about books and stories. She's different." James looked at his son. Something shifted in his expression. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. Handed it to Jennifer. "Write it down." She blinked. "Seriously?" Ron nodded, almost shyly. "You don't have to answer. Just in case I want to know what pigeons do on weekends." She smiled then, real and wide, tore off the corner of the card and scribbled her number. Folded it once. Handed it to the boy. "Only if it's about stories. Okay? No prank calls. No promises," Ron said. James was still watching her. Not cold, just measured. "You're not like the others," he said, almost to himself. She tilted her head. "No idea what that means. But thanks, I guess." And just like that, she was gone. Boots tapping against the tile. Denim jacket pulled close. And a part of her, the smallest part, hoping she hadn't just burned every bridge she didn't even know existed. Jennifer didn't expect a message. She assumed that was it. A strange hour with a stranger's kid. A folded napkin with her number. And a narrow escape from the most awkward confrontation of her month. But the message came anyway. Not from James. From Ron. At 7:42 p.m. that same night, her old phone lit up with a single-line text. What book would a pigeon mayor read first? R. She stared at it, then laughed, loud and alone. In the tiny kitchen she shared with her grandmother and 3 other tenants. Her grandmother, curled up in a recliner behind her, opened one eye. "Something funny?" Jennifer just shook her head. "Yeah, a pigeon wants to read Tolstoy." "That night," she replied. "The Art of War, or maybe How to Win Friends and Influence Seagulls." No answer. Not that night. Not the next. Until 2 days later, another one just as simple. "Thanks. I liked that." And with that, it began. A slow, quiet thread of occasional messages. All innocent. All genuine. Sometimes Ron would ask about fantasy books. Other times he'd just send a weird fact like, "Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts?" Jennifer would reply with something equally odd. "Did you know raccoons wash their food before eating it? Unless it's cotton candy. That goes badly." No flirting. No overstepping. Just a quiet conversation between 2 people. One young, one tired, who found comfort in words. But what Jennifer didn't know was this. James read every message. Not out of control. Out of caution. Because Ron hadn't spoken that much in months. Not since his mother died. Not since therapy turned into silence and the world became something to endure, not explore. And now this girl, this woman with sun-faded clothes and a smirk sharper than a steak knife, had somehow cracked through. James didn't know how to feel about that. He just watched. Until the next time they met. It happened a week later, by accident or fate, who could say? Jennifer was exiting the grocery store. One bag of bread, one can of soup, and a small, dented tin of sardines her grandmother insisted tasted like the sea used to. She almost didn't see them until she heard it. "Hey, Pigeon Mayor." She turned. There was Ron, grinning, hoodie sleeves pulled over his fists, standing beside James Remar himself in front of a sleek black car parked at the curb. She blinked, stared, then laughed. "You still remember that?" Ron nodded. "You told me stories don't have to make sense. Just heart." Jennifer looked at James, unsure. He gave a small nod. "We just came from a thing," Ron said. "Some boardroom dinner. Dad said I could pick where we stop next. I picked books." Jennifer noticed the bag in his hand, a children's bookstore tote. "You like bookstores?" she asked. "They smell better than banks." James almost smiled. "Want to join us for coffee?" he asked. Jennifer froze. "I can't really afford fancy." "My treat," he interrupted. Calm, not pitying, just offering. She hesitated, then looked at Ron, hopeful, not pleading. "Just interested. Only if I get to tell the next part of the pigeon story." Ron gave a royal bow. "Lead the way, Mayor." The cafe was small, tucked behind a row of antique shops. Ron ordered cocoa. Jennifer got tea. James, black coffee, no sugar. They sat near the window. Ron sandwiched between the adults like a small bridge between two vastly different worlds. James watched. Jennifer talked. Ron smiled. And somewhere in the rhythm of their words, something softened. Until Jennifer asked the question she shouldn't have. "So, what exactly do you do?" James paused. "Business. Food manufacturing. Innovation. Sounds like robots making soup." Ron snorted. James tilted his head. "Something like that." Jennifer shrugged. "Well, thanks for the coffee. And the cocoa. I'll pay you back when I win the lottery." "You don't owe me anything," James said. But she looked at him sharply. "No offense. But men like you don't give away anything for free." A beat. Ron looked between them, then muttered, "She's not wrong." Jennifer burst out laughing. James just blinked. And for a second, just 1 second, it felt like family. Not rich, not poor, just present. But outside, as she said goodbye, something shifted. James handed her a small envelope. "No pressure. Just, if you ever want something more permanent than corner tables and quick stories." She opened it. A card. One line. Remar Foundation Youth Outreach Literacy Program. Story Coach. $50 per hour. Flexible hours. She looked up, stunned. "You offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a choice." Jennifer hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. "Do I look like someone with a resume?" James met her gaze. "You look like someone who tells stories that make a boy laugh again. I don't care what paper says." She swallowed hard. And for the first time since she lost her home, her job, and most of her pride, Jennifer Coolidge considered the idea that maybe the world still had a corner for her after all. Jennifer didn't say yes right away. She carried the card for 2 days, tucked it into the front pocket of her denim jacket like a talisman she didn't believe in. At night, she'd take it out and reread the line. Story Coach. $50 per hour. Flexible hours. Felt unreal. Too clean. Too generous. Like a dream someone else was meant to have. Her grandmother, sharp despite the slow shuffle in her walk, noticed. That's the look of a girl who's been offered something and is too scared to reach for it. Jennifer sighed. It's not that. It's always that. They were sitting at the tiny table in the corner of their shared unit. Mismatched chairs, flickering overhead light, the smell of boiled rice and mint tea in the air. Her grandmother leaned forward. Tell me what you're afraid of. Jennifer looked down at her hands. That if I step into his world, I'll disappear. But the next morning a message arrived. Short, sweet, from Ron. Do you know how to explain metaphors to fourth graders? Asking for a friend. She replied, Depends. Are they about dragons or pigeons? He answered immediately, Both, and that settled it. The Remar Foundation's office wasn't in a skyscraper. It was tucked into the corner of a public library downtown. Clean but lived in, with posters of storytime events, donated beanbags, and a half-broken vending machine that only gave out orange soda. Jennifer entered quietly, unsure. The woman at the desk looked up and smiled. You must be Jennifer. He said you might come. He. The woman tilted her head. The little boss. Ron. Jennifer laughed despite herself. They gave her a small office space. Just a table, some worn chairs, and a whiteboard with the ghost of 100 markers past. A few shelves with donated books leaned like tired shoulders. She loved it instantly. Her first session was with 3 kids, 2 rowdy boys and 1 shy girl with big eyes and a broken backpack zipper. Jennifer sat cross-legged on the floor and told the story of Captain Crumb, the pigeon mayor who accidentally declared war on squirrels. The kids howled. Even the shy girl giggled. When it was over, one of the boys asked, Are you coming back? Jennifer just nodded. Because in that moment, surrounded by giggles and dusty books, she realized something. She belonged. James didn't show up. Not for the first few days. But Jennifer saw his handprints everywhere. In the laminated cards the kids used, in the snack boxes labeled with tiny sticky notes, in the way the staff smiled like they actually liked being there. And then, one afternoon, she saw him. He was standing near the back door, talking quietly with a counselor. No suit, just jeans, a sweater, and sleeves pushed to his elbows. He looked ordinary, human. He turned and their eyes met. You made it, he said simply. She nodded. Your son bribed me with literary metaphors. He smirked. He has good taste. They stood quietly for a moment, watching a boy with a marker on his cheek try to act out a night scene with a traffic cone. James spoke again. You're good with them. Jennifer shrugged. Kids don't lie. If they're bored, they tell you. If they like you, they show up. He glanced at her, thoughtful. And if they trust you, they listen. Jennifer's voice softened. Yeah, that too. As the weeks passed, Jennifer became a fixture. Ron would come by after school sometimes, sit in the back corner and sketch little scenes from her stories. Once, he handed her a drawing. A pigeon with a superhero cape and a tiny tag that said, JC. She pinned it to the board behind her desk. But it wasn't just the kids she connected with. It was the rhythm, the structure, the slow return of confidence. She even started bringing in her own books, creating handouts, planning themes. It was real, but it couldn't stay perfect forever. Because ghosts have a way of clawing back when you least expect them. One Friday afternoon, while Jennifer was waiting for a delivery of new supplies, she wandered into the back office to use the copy machine. The door was slightly ajar. Inside was James, on a call. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but his voice was low, tight, the way people sound when they're trying not to break. No, I don't care what the investors say. The Hartwick district isn't for sale. That project was buried for a reason. Jennifer froze. Hartwick. Her fingers curled around the edge of the doorframe. She hadn't heard that name in months. It was the neighborhood where she and her grandmother used to live. Before the eviction. Before the renovation trucks. Before the anonymous corporate letters signed by someone she'd never seen. James paused, then added, "It was a mistake. One we're still paying for." The call ended. He leaned forward, hands on the desk, as if the weight of what he wasn't saying was heavier than anything spoken. Jennifer backed away quietly, returned to her room, and for the rest of the day, she smiled like nothing happened. But something inside her had cracked. That night, she walked home slower than usual. Her boots scuffed the sidewalk. The city hummed around her. She thought of her grandmother sleeping on a borrowed mattress in a damp room. Thought of the cat they had to leave behind. Thought of the man who gave her a job and a place to shine, and how his voice on that call had sounded a lot like guilt. Jennifer didn't know what to do with that. Was he responsible? Was he trying to fix it? Did it matter? All she knew was the past wasn't staying quiet, and she wasn't sure she could either. She didn't sleep that night, not because of anger, not because of pain, because of confusion. Jennifer sat by the tiny window in her shared room, knees hugged to her chest, watching headlights flicker across the ceiling. Her phone buzzed twice, one message from a student's mom asking about next week's reading schedule, and one from Ron. "We did metaphors today. I said you're like a flashlight in a cave." The teacher looked confused. She smiled, weakly, and didn't reply. Not yet. The next morning, she skipped the long walk to the foundation. She needed air, distance. She walked past the Hartwick block, or what used to be Hartwick. The brick buildings were still there, mostly, but they'd been gutted and rebranded with shiny siding, new signs, a coffee shop where the bodega used to be, and some co-living complex named Nest that advertised affordable modern luxury for creatives. It wasn't affordable. It wasn't for anyone like her. And it certainly wasn't for her grandmother, who had spent 32 years in that now-demolished corner apartment with the crooked balcony and flower boxes full of mint. Jennifer stood in front of the new sign for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just stood there and let the memory settle like dust in her throat. That's when her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a photo. Ron, sitting on the floor of her classroom, holding up a sign he'd drawn with crayon. "You're late, flashlight." She exhaled, let the warmth in, and started walking. The kids were already mid-chaos when she entered. Books everywhere, one child pretending to be a dog, two more arguing over who gets to read the dragon part aloud. But they paused when she stepped in, and cheered. "Miss Jenny." Ron handed her a juice box. "You good?" She ruffled his hair. "No, but I'm here." He nodded like that was enough. For now it was. After the lesson, James was waiting near the hallway. Not in a suit, not even in business shoes, just standing there, arms crossed, watching her with something unreadable in his eyes. "You missed your shift," he said. "I came late," she replied. "Still counts." He nodded. "Can we talk?" Jennifer looked down the hallway. Ron was still there, watching. "I don't want to say anything I'll regret in front of your kid. I thought you liked him." "I do," she said honestly. "That's why I don't want him thinking I smile at people who destroyed my neighborhood." James blinked, slowly. So, she knew. They stepped outside. It was cold. Not biting, but enough to make her wish she'd worn a thicker jacket. "I overheard your call," she said plainly. "Hartwick." James said nothing at first. Then, "It wasn't supposed to happen that way." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "That's rich coming from the man at the top." "I didn't sign off on the demolition. It was handled by an investor without full transparency." "Did you live there?" "No." "Did your son?" James looked away. Jennifer's voice softened. Not from mercy, but exhaustion. "I lived there. I watched my grandmother cry when they boarded up our door. I packed our life into 5 trash bags. And when I tried to fight it, no one listened. Because your name was on the paper." "I know," he said, quietly. "It was one of the worst decisions my company ever made." Jennifer tilted her head. "So what did you do about it?" He hesitated. "I stopped the next project. Pulled funding. I created the literacy fund as a way to give something back." She folded her arms. "That's not giving back. That's redirecting guilt." His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in restraint. "Maybe, but it's something." "Is it enough?" she asked. "No," he admitted, and for the first time she believed him. They stood in silence, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. Then James spoke again. "You were right. I don't give things for free. Not usually." She glanced at him. "But you gave me that job." He shook his head. "No, Ron did." Jennifer blinked. "He begged me to find a reason to bring you back after that first dinner. Said you made him feel normal." Her voice cracked, just a little. "I didn't mean to get attached." "Neither did I," he said softly. Jennifer stepped back. "I need time." James nodded. "Take it. But if I walk away, don't chase me with policies and paperwork. Just let me go." "I won't stop you," he said, "but I will ask you for one thing." She raised an eyebrow. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded note. Ron's handwriting. Inside, "If you're mad at my dad, that's okay. But I still want to know how the pigeon story ends." Jennifer left without another word. She walked all the way to the train station. No destination, just motion. Sat on the platform, cradling that note, rereading it until the ink blurred from the sweat on her palms. And in that moment, somewhere between ache and anger, between city and sky, she made a decision. Not because she forgave, not because she forgot, but because someone small had believed in her, and she couldn't leave his story unfinished. It wasn't dramatic. There was no teary return, no rain-drenched apology. Just the click of the front door of the Foundation's office at 9:07 a.m. the next Monday morning, and Jennifer walking in with a paper bag of day-old pastries and a note for the kids that read. "Today we overthrow the squirrel empire. Long live the pigeon mayor." The room erupted. One of the little ones screamed, "She's back!" Someone knocked over a chair, and Ron just smiled. Quiet, wide, relieved. She taught that day with a strange fire in her chest. Not fury, not sadness, purpose. At lunch, Ron walked over and handed her a fresh sheet of paper. On it, a new character sketch. The pigeon mayor, wearing a cape stitched together from eviction notices. She stared at it, swallowed hard. "Too much?" he asked. Jennifer shook her head. "No, it's perfect." He sat beside her, chewing on a piece of apple. "My dad's not perfect either," he said quietly. Jennifer didn't reply. "He doesn't tell me when he's sad. But I know. I see it." She looked at Ron. "You see a lot." He nodded. People don't think kids notice, but we notice everything. Jennifer gave him a small smile. You're kind of brilliant. Yeah, he shrugged. But I'm still failing math. She laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he made her forget how heavy the world could be. Later that week, James stopped by, unannounced. He lingered in the hallway like a man approaching a door he wasn't sure he was welcome to open. Jennifer noticed. She walked over slowly. No suits today? He looked down at his sweater. You disapprove? It's less punchable. He chuckled, caught off guard. I'm glad you came back, he said quietly. I didn't come back for you. I know. I came back for them. For him. James looked toward the classroom, where Ron was reading a book upside down while pretending it was a spaceship. He still sleeps with the stuffed bear his mom gave him, James said suddenly. He acts like he's too grown for it, but I hear him whispering to it when he thinks I'm not near. Jennifer softened. You loved her. He nodded. Every day. Even now. And losing her made you what? Afraid, he answered. Of loving again. Of trusting. Of breaking something twice. She paused, then asked, And me? What did I make you? James looked at her unflinching, hopeful. A week later, a letter arrived at Jennifer's door. No return address, just her name neatly written. Inside, a notice of reversal. The Remar Corporation was officially dissolving all development rights over Hartwick. The property would be turned over to the city for the creation of low-income housing and a community arts center. Attached was a short, typed note. Not everything can be undone, but this is a start. Jr. At the bottom, a handwritten postscript. Tell Ron how the pigeon mayor wins, and maybe save a seat at the table, if there's ever room. Jennifer didn't call, didn't write back, but she did something else. She planned a storytelling night at the foundation, invited all the kids, their parents, even a few curious librarians. She decorated the space with cardboard towers and hand-drawn cityscapes, borrowed a microphone from the front desk, made lemonade from scratch, and at the center of it all, a throne made of beanbags, labeled Mayor's Chair. Ron sat proudly in it, and when Jennifer stepped onto the tiny stage to tell the next chapter in the Pigeon Saga, she saw him, James, standing at the back, arms crossed, watching quietly, not commanding, not controlling, just listening. The story that night wasn't about pigeons, not really. It was about choices, about what it meant to lead, about fixing things not because you caused them, but because someone had to. She didn't name names. She didn't point fingers. But when she reached the end, she said, and the mayor, small and stubborn, didn't save the city by building towers. He saved it by listening, by noticing, by remembering who was left behind. Silence, then applause, then a quiet voice from the beanbag throne. Best ending yet. Afterward, when most of the families had left and the decorations were half falling down, James approached her. She didn't move. He didn't speak, just held out a paper cup of warm lemonade and said, Thank you for not walking away. She took it and whispered, I almost did, but you didn't. No, she said, because of him. He nodded. Then, after a pause, do I still have to earn a seat at the table? Jennifer looked at him, then pointed to the folding chair next to the throne. One condition. Name it. You don't get to be the mayor. James cracked a rare, genuine grin. Fair. That night, As she and Ron cleaned up the room together, he asked, "So, are you and my dad gonna kiss now? Or is that like an adult thing you wait until part 7 for?" Jennifer burst out laughing and replied, "Let's just say, the pigeons are still figuring that out." Rain drummed softly against the window panes the next morning. Jennifer sat at the foundation's reading corner, knees tucked under her, sipping warm tea as Ron built a tower out of picture books beside her. It was a quiet day. No lessons, no chaos, just that rare kind of calm that felt like the inside of a memory. She hadn't realized how natural this rhythm had become. The low hum of kids' chatter, the smell of old paper and glue sticks, Ron's occasional muttering as he debated with himself whether dragons could wear glasses. James hadn't shown up in a few days. Not since the storytelling night. She didn't expect him to. She wasn't waiting. But that didn't stop her from noticing the silence. Around lunchtime, she walked to the front desk to check the mail. A small padded envelope sat in her cubby. No return name, but she recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside a book. Not a new one. Not even a particularly rare one. Just a second-hand copy of The Little Prince, well-worn, underlined, filled with soft pencil markings. The same edition she used to read to her grandmother when she was 10. On the title page was a sticky note. "You once said stories keep people warm longer than coats. This one helped me once. Maybe now it's your turn. J.R." She clutched the book to her chest, closed her eyes, and allowed herself to miss someone she wasn't sure she was allowed to miss. That evening, as she prepared to leave, she found Ron waiting by the door. He was fidgeting with his sleeves, eyes darting toward the window. "He told me to give you this," he said, handing her a folded note. Jennifer opened it. "If you're not too busy tomorrow, there's a place I'd like to show you. It's not Hartwick, but it matters. James." Then a scribbled postscript. "Ron says I should bring muffins. I'm bringing muffins." She smiled despite herself. The next day, he met her on the corner near the bus stop. No car, no suit, just a dark hoodie and 2 paper bags of muffins. Jennifer raised a brow. "Trying to pass for poor today?" James grinned. "Trying to pass for human." They walked side by side through the older part of town, past shuttered bookstores and faded murals. He didn't explain where they were going. She didn't ask. Finally, he stopped in front of a red brick building with boarded windows and ivy crawling up the side. A rusted plaque by the door read, "Holloway Youth Center closed." James turned to her. "My mom used to volunteer here," he said. "She taught art classes for kids who got kicked out of school." Jennifer ran her hand over the peeling paint. "Why'd it shut down?" "Funding cuts. Neglect. The usual." She looked at him. "And you're showing me this because?" He hesitated. Then, "Because I'm buying it back." Her eyes widened. "You're what?" He stepped closer. "To rebuild it. Not as a Remar project. No PR. No investors. Just a space. For stories. For kids who don't fit in the glossy places." Jennifer stared at him. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't optics. This was real. "You want me to run it?" He shook his head. "I want you to shape it. Design it. Make it yours." "I'm not a director," she said. "You're a builder," he replied. "Of trust. Of warmth. Of hope." A beat of silence passed between them. Then she asked, "Why this? Why now?" James looked down. "Because the woman my son looks up to shouldn't be working in borrowed corners and patching stories together with duct tape." Jennifer's throat tightened. She turned back toward the building. Can we paint the walls yellow? As many shades as you want. The next few weeks unfolded like chapters in a slow, hopeful novel. Paperwork, paint samples, brainstorms scrawled on napkins. James let her lead. And Ron named the place. The Story Nest. When Jennifer asked him why, he shrugged. Because nests are messy, but they're where everything starts. One night, after painting the entryway ceiling pale gold and smelling like turpentine and floor wax, James and Jennifer sat on the front steps eating muffins with paint-stained fingers. James handed her a can of soda. We make a weird team. Jennifer leaned back. We're not a team. No. She looked at him. Not yet. James was quiet, thoughtful. Then cautiously, what would make us one? She stared at him. Then quietly, when I can walk into your world and still recognize myself. He nodded. And until then? Jennifer smirked. You keep bringing muffins. He laughed. Deal. Later that night, James walked her home. Not to her doorstep, just to the edge of the block, where streetlights turned everything silver. Before she left, she said, You're trying, you know, and that's more than most. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something folded, the pigeon drawing Ron had made of her. He'd laminated it. Jennifer took it, blinked, and laughed. You're ridiculous. I'm persistent. Still not the mayor. Fine, he said. But maybe city council? She shook her head, walked backward slowly, the pigeon portrait clutched in her hand. You're lucky I like muffins, she called. And you're lucky my son likes pigeons, he answered. They didn't say goodbye. They just paused and smiled. The grand opening of the Story Nest wasn't grand. There were no press releases, no ribbon cutting, no gold-plated scissors or flashing cameras. Just kids, dozens of them, running through the new yellow halls like they owned the place because they did. The walls were hand-painted with sketches from fairy tales, urban legends, and Ron's favorite, an entire mural of the pigeon mayor flying over the city skyline, with his cape trailing into a constellation of stars. Jennifer stood in the corner of the main reading room, a clipboard in one hand, a juice box in the other, wondering how her life had changed so completely, and yet somehow still felt like hers. No makeup, no heels, just her, in a faded flannel shirt, mismatched socks, and paint still under her fingernails. And then came the sound of familiar wheels on tile. Permission to enter the mayor's office? Ron asked, rolling in dramatically with a cereal crown on his head and a blanket as a cape. Jennifer bowed. Only if you recite your royal decree. Ron cleared his throat. All children shall receive 1, 2 cookies, 2, 1 silly story, 3, unlimited pigeon-themed stickers. Applause broke out from the small crowd of parents nearby. Jennifer handed him a cookie. Decree accepted. James stood off to the side, arms folded, watching it all unfold. He didn't insert himself. He didn't take credit. He just observed until Ron waved him over. Dad, come sit. James walked over and perched on the arm of a beanbag chair next to his son. Jennifer passed him a juice box. No coffee allowed in the nest, she warned. James raised an eyebrow. Even for co-founders? Especially for co-founders. This is a sacred, sugar-fueled land. They grinned at each other, something unspoken flickering in the space between them. Later, after the event wound down and parents began collecting children, Jennifer stayed behind to sweep confetti and cookie crumbs from the floor. James stayed too. Of course he did. They worked in silence, comfortable and close, like people who no longer needed to fill the air with anything other than breath and motion. When the room was empty, he leaned against the wall and watched her wind up the extension cord. "You were born for this," he said. She paused. "For wrangling chaos? For making people feel seen?" Jennifer set the cord down, brushing her hands on her jeans. "You used to look at me like I didn't belong here. I never thought that. You didn't have to. You walked like a man used to rooms that opened for him. I walked like someone waiting to be kicked out." James looked at her, really looked. "And now," she met his gaze, "now I walk like I built the room." A long, quiet beat. Then he stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth of him, the hesitation in him, the weight he always carried like armor under his charm. "I want to be careful with this," he said, voice low. "With me?" she asked. "With all of it. You, him. I don't want to be another person who promises more than he can hold." Jennifer's voice was soft, but steady. "Then don't promise anything." He blinked. "Just keep showing up," she continued. "That's the only kind of love I believe in." James reached out then, slowly, and touched her hand. Not a grab, not a pull, just the quiet weight of fingers on fingers. "I can do that," he said. She smiled. "Good." They didn't kiss. Not yet. They stood there under the soft buzz of ceiling lights, surrounded by books and leftover balloons and echoes of laughter. And that was enough. For now. That weekend, Ron invited Jennifer over for dinner. He insisted. "I made spaghetti. The noodles are crooked, but that's called personality." Jennifer arrived with a box of board games and a tub of homemade ice cream she'd bartered for at the local market. Their apartment was simple but warm. Photos of James's late wife still hung in the hallway, not mournful, just present, like memory wrapped in light. At dinner, Ron talked endlessly. About comics, about a bug he'd found, about his campaign to rename Tuesday Taco Quest. James just listened, watching his son, watching Jennifer, not with hunger, but with awe. After dinner, Ron disappeared into his room to watch cartoons. Jennifer helped dry the dishes. As she handed him a damp plate, James said softly, "You're the only person who's been here besides my sister in years." Jennifer looked up. "Why me?" He set the plate down. "Because you didn't try to fix me. Or him. You just stayed. Even when you had every reason to leave." Jennifer leaned back against the counter, arms folded. "I almost didn't. I know." A beat passed. Then he added, "But I'm glad you did." She glanced toward the hallway. "So is he." "And you?" he asked. Jennifer was quiet. Then simply, "I'm learning." "Learning what?" She stepped closer. "How to stop running." And then finally they kissed. Not dramatic, not sweeping, just a soft, slow moment in the quiet of a kitchen, beside clean dishes and flickering hallway light. A kiss that said, "This isn't the end. It's the start of something honest." It started with 3 mugs. 1 black coffee, 1 cinnamon hot cocoa, and 1 chipped cup with a cartoon pigeon on it, filled with lukewarm tea Jennifer kept forgetting to finish. They sat on the windowsill every morning in James's apartment, like a quiet ritual no one had planned but no one dared to change. Sometimes Ron would add a 4th mug for a guest, usually a plush bear or a hand-drawn alien made of duct tape. Sometimes James would scribble notes in the margins of Jennifer's stories before work. Sometimes Jennifer would just sit there in the early hush of the morning and wonder how something this soft could grow from something that once felt like ruin. She still lived with her grandmother, though less often now. Sometimes she slept at the apartment. Sometimes she just stayed late, reading on the couch, her legs tucked under her as Ron fell asleep with a book on his chest and James typed quietly on the floor. They didn't call it anything. No one declared love. No one demanded timelines. It just was. And it was good. One Sunday, they all went for a walk through the East Side Market, the kind with crates of fruit, handmade jewelry, buskers playing soft jazz near the fountain. Jennifer bought a necklace made of pressed daisies. Ron bartered for a rock shaped like a heart. James just watched them, smiling like someone who had finally figured out what it meant to want without fear. Near the end of the walk, Ron tugged on Jennifer's sleeve. "You know what I like about you?" She looked down. "What?" "You don't try to be shiny, but you still glow." Jennifer blinked, caught off guard. "Where did you hear that?" He grinned. "I made it up. Poet in the making," James said proudly. "I'm gonna be a mayor," Ron replied. "Poetry's just my side hustle." That evening they cooked dinner together, or tried to. James burned the garlic bread. Ron spilled the sauce. Jennifer dropped the spoon into the pot and had to fish it out with salad tongs. They laughed until their cheeks hurt. Afterward, Ron curled up on the couch under his pigeon blanket and asked Jennifer to read him a story. Not one of hers. One of his mom's favorites. A short tale about a boy who built a city from matchsticks and kept it in his pocket. Jennifer's voice trembled only once, when the boy shared the city with someone who needed a home. Ron fell asleep before the last page. James stood behind her in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes soft. "She would have liked you," he said. Jennifer closed the book. "Your wife." He nodded. "Then I hope she'd forgive me for falling for her family." James stepped forward. "I think she'd thank you. They didn't make promises, but they made muffins. They didn't wear rings, but they shared umbrella walks and blanket forts and early mornings filled with coffee steam and shared glances." When Jennifer finally moved in, it wasn't an announcement. Just a suitcase by the door and a new toothbrush in the holder. And when she got promoted to director of programs at the Story Nest, Ron made her a business card that read, "Jennifer Coolidge, boss of hope and cookies," stayed on her desk, laminated. A year passed. Then two. The foundation expanded. A second location opened in a refurbished school bus painted bright blue. Jennifer gave a TEDx talk. Shaky, unrehearsed, and so full of truth that half the room cried. James stayed in the background just like always. Still powerful. Still busy. But no longer alone. Not at night. Not at breakfast. Not in the moments that mattered. And Ron, he grew. Taller. Funnier. Softer around the people who deserved it. Fiercer against those who didn't. At age 12, he won a city poetry contest with a piece called "The Girl Who Stayed." He dedicated it to Jennifer and to pigeons. Before she met James on the balcony that night, Jennifer made one quiet stop. She visited her grandmother. The old woman lived now in a small, sun-filled room in a modest care home a few blocks from the Story Nest. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe, clean, quiet. A place with potted herbs on the windowsill and tea always steeping somewhere nearby. The kind of place that didn't demand you prove you belonged. Her grandmother sat in her favorite chair by the window, knitting something with no clear purpose. A scarf, a sleeve, maybe just a way to keep her hands busy. "You're seeing that man again?" she asked without looking up. Jennifer smiled. I'm not sure I'm seeing him. I'm just standing nearby. Nearby's the most dangerous place to be, her grandmother muttered. Closer than fear, but not quite trust. She set her needles down, looked up. But if he made you laugh the way you used to laugh, back in Hartwick before the rent letters came, I won't fight it. Jennifer knelt beside her, taking her hand. You were always my first lighthouse, she whispered. Now I want to be that for someone else. Her grandmother's fingers closed around hers. Light doesn't dim when you share it, she said. It multiplies. One evening, Jennifer found James on the balcony, watching the lights of the city. She stood beside him, arms folded. What are you thinking? She asked. He was quiet for a moment, then turned to her. That if someone had told me a girl who wandered into the wrong event just to get a free meal would become the one thing that made this life feel real, I would have called them crazy. Jennifer leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. I didn't sit next to your son because of fate, she said. I sat next to him because there was a chair, and he looked alone. James kissed her hair. That's what love is. Sitting next to people who don't ask, but still need someone there. Jennifer smiled. Still not the mayor, though. He laughed. Never was. She turned to him fully, her voice a whisper. Want to know a secret? Always. She stepped closer. I didn't come for the food. James smirked. No, I stayed for the kid. And now, she kissed him softly. Now, I stay for everything. As the city blinked below them, the three mugs sat quietly in the kitchen. One for her, one for him, one for the boy who changed everything. And one day soon, maybe one more, because some stories don't end. They grow quietly, steadily, like nests, messy, hopeful, full of warmth.